When you discover the most intimate secrets of a stranger and decide they're the love of your life, are you following your heart or creating a fantasy that could destroy everyone involved? I'm Natalie. I'm 28 years old. I live in Portland. And for a long time, I believed that true love meant doing anything for the person you loved. But what happened to me in recent months made me question whether there's a thin line between love and obsession, or if they're just different words to describe the same dangerous thing. Look, I never imagined that buying a used phone on the marketplace could turn my life upside down. It was a regular Tuesday in Portland, Oregon, and I was there, counting pennies at the end of the month, when my iPhone simply decided it didn't want to work anymore. You know how it is, right? That moment when you realize having a working phone is more important than eating well for a week. I found an ad from someone named Lauren selling an iPhone in perfect condition for a price that fit my tight budget. The woman seemed super rushed to get rid of the device, said she had gotten a new one at work and needed to sell it quickly. When I got home, I started that usual ritual, transferring contacts, downloading apps, setting everything up my way. But that's when things got interesting. You know, when you're using your phone and suddenly a notification or folder appears that shouldn't be there, well, that's exactly what happened. Lauren had forgotten to completely clean the device, and I came across a hidden folder full of photos that definitely weren't mine. My curiosity got the better of me, and I kept clicking, one by one, like a detective investigating a mysterious case. The first photos were normal. Selfies, food, landscapes. Typical of anyone. But then I started seeing images that left me breathless. They weren't intimate photos in the explicit sense, but there was something there that awakened a curiosity I couldn't explain. They were photos of a woman, clearly Lauren, receiving massages from a man who looked like he came out of a movie. Strong hands, intense gaze, that kind of presence you feel even through the phone screen. I should have stopped there, deleted everything, and moved on with my life, but something pulled me to keep snooping. That's when I found the messages. Entire conversations between Lauren and this guy, who apparently was named Marcus and worked as a therapeutic massage therapist. The messages were an interesting mix, professional, but with an intimacy that transcended the client-therapist relationship. He talked about relaxation techniques, tension points, but always with a care that made me feel a strange pang in my chest. "You always know exactly where I need to be touched," said one of her messages. "It's my job to know every muscle in your body," he replied, with a heart emoji that made me swallow hard. I stayed there, that dawn, reading conversation after conversation, seeing photo after photo, as if I were snooping on a real person's life, which, technically, I was doing. But there was something about that man that intrigued me deeply. It wasn't just the physical appearance, although he was really attractive. It was the way he spoke, how he showed genuine care, how he seemed to understand emotional needs behind physical tensions. I found myself imagining what it would be like to have someone like that in my life, someone who knew exactly how to touch me, both physically and emotionally. When I finally managed to stop snooping and went to sleep, it was almost 4 in the morning. But I couldn't get those images out of my head. I dreamed of firm hands relieving tensions I didn't even know I had, of gazes that penetrated deeper than any bar conversation. I woke up with a strange feeling, as if I had discovered a secret that would change everything. And maybe, in a way, I really had discovered it. Because from that moment on, I knew I needed to meet this Marcus, even if it meant diving into completely unknown and potentially dangerous territories. In the following days, I became a real digital stalker. I couldn't stop going through those conversations, looking for every clue about who this Marcus was and how I could find him. I discovered he worked at a spa called Serenity Wellness in downtown Portland, and that he had a very loyal clientele. Lauren wasn't the only one who spoke wonders about him. There were addresses, schedules, even references about rates and availability. It was like I had access to a secret world where women shared intimate experiences about this man who seemed to have the gift of healing both body and soul. Each new discovery fed my growing obsession even more. What caught my attention most was the way he communicated. It wasn't just professional, but carried a natural sensuality that transpired through words. "I need to work this area slower. You have a lot of tension buildup here," he wrote, and I could practically feel the tone of his voice. There was an intimacy in the conversations that went beyond what I would expect from a therapist-client relationship. He asked about her day, about work stress, about personal relationships. And Lauren responded with an openness that made me feel almost like a voyeur, watching an emotional dance that I desperately wanted to be part of. Through the messages, I began to build a psychological profile of Marcus Lee. He was clearly someone who understood women in a way that few men can. He knew when to offer comfort, when to be firm, when to simply listen. Your muscles are screaming for attention, but your heart is screaming even louder, said a message that made me sigh involuntarily. There was an emotional depth there that I had never found in any relationship. He wasn't just a massage therapist. He was a healer of wounds that weren't always visible to the naked eye. More investigation revealed that Marcus had a holistic approach. He didn't just treat the body, but the person as a whole. In the photos that Lauren had kept, I could see an environment with candles, essential oils, ambient music, a complete experience of relaxation and connection. There was one particular photo that left me completely hypnotized, his hands working on her shoulders, with a concentration and dedication that bordered on artistic. I found myself imagining what it would be like to feel those hands on me. What it would be like to have all that attention focused exclusively on my well-being. What intrigued me most was realizing through the conversations that Marcus maintained professional distance, even with all the intimacy. He never crossed certain lines, always redirected when clients tried to take the conversation to more personal territories. "My job is to take care of you during these sessions, nothing more," he responded when Lauren hinted at romantic interests. This posture made me admire him even more, but also awakened an internal challenge. If he was so careful with professional boundaries, how could I win something deeper? How could I make him see me not just as another client, but as a woman who deserved his complete attention? After a whole week immersed in these discoveries, I had enough information to write an unauthorized biography of the guy. I knew his schedules, his preferred techniques, even what type of music he liked to use during sessions. But all this knowledge only intensified my need to meet him personally. I needed to feel firsthand what Lauren and other women had experienced. I needed to discover if this connection I felt through messages and photos could turn into something real and tangible. The question was, how the hell was I going to get a session with him without looking like a complete crazy person who had invaded another person's privacy? After a week of planning like a real spy, I finally called Serenity Wellness. My heart was beating so hard I was sure the receptionist on the other end could hear it. "Hi, I'd like to schedule a therapeutic massage session with Marcus," I said, trying to sound casual like it was the most normal thing in the world. The girl was super nice and informed me that he had an opening on Thursday at 3 in the afternoon. "Is this your first time here?" she asked, and I almost stuttered a yes while my mind screamed, but I already know everything about him. I made the appointment and spent the next 3 days oscillating between extreme anxiety and an expectation that left me completely restless. On Thursday, I arrived at the spa 40 minutes before the scheduled time. Yes, I know, pathetic, but I needed to study the environment, observe how he interacted with other clients, maybe even get a peek at him before our official meeting. The place was exactly as I had imagined through the photos, welcoming environment. Soft music, relaxing aromas that immediately made me feel calmer. When he appeared to get the previous client, I almost choked on the tea I was drinking in the waiting room. Man, the photos didn't do him justice. He was even more attractive in person, with a presence that filled the entire environment. Tall, broad shoulders, but with a softness in his gaze that made me feel butterflies in my stomach. "You must be Natalie," he said, approaching with a warm smile that made me momentarily forget my own name. I confirmed with a nod, trying to seem normal, while internally I was freaking out. He led me to the massage room, explaining the procedure with a voice that was exactly as I had imagined. Deep, calm, comforting. "Is this your first time having therapeutic massage?" he asked, and I lied shamelessly, saying yes. Actually, I wanted him to explain everything to me, wanted to prolong that initial conversation as much as possible. While he talked about techniques and benefits, I observed every gesture, every expression, comparing with the images I had seen on Lauren's phone. The most tense moment was when he left for me to change. My hands were shaking as I took off my clothes and lay on the table, covered only by a towel. When he knocked on the door, asking if I was ready, my voice came out higher than normal. "You can come in," I managed to say, and when he entered, the environment changed completely. There was an instant intimacy that I didn't expect, a connection that seemed to transcend the professional aspect of the situation. He started working on my shoulders, and I swear I felt an electric current run through my entire body. It wasn't just the physical touch, but the way he seemed to intuitively know exactly where I needed to be touched. During the session, I tried to make conversation naturally, asking questions about his work, about how he had discovered this vocation. He responded with genuine interest, but always maintaining that professional distance I already knew through the messages. "Each person carries different tensions," he explained, "and my job is to decipher what the body is trying to communicate." While he spoke, I wondered if he could decipher the sexual tension I was feeling, if he realized that my interest went far beyond therapeutic massage. There were moments when our eyes met through the room's mirror, and I was sure there was something more there, a chemistry that couldn't be ignored. When the session ended, I felt completely different. It wasn't just the physical relaxation, but something had changed in me emotionally. While I was getting dressed, I was already thinking about how to schedule the next session. "How do you feel?" he asked when I came out of the room, and I answered honestly, completely transformed. He smiled with professional satisfaction, but I saw a different gleam in his eyes, as if my response had touched something deeper. I scheduled another session for the following week, and when I left the spa, I knew I had started something that would change my life completely. The question was, did he feel the same connection I did, or was I projecting my own desires onto signs that didn't exist? The following sessions became the highlight of my week. I started scheduling always at the same time, creating a routine that gave me something to look forward to with anxiety. Marcus seemed to notice my regularity and always received me with a warmer smile, as if my presence was genuinely welcome. "Natalie, how was your week?" he would ask. And I realized it wasn't just professional courtesy. There was real interest there. I started sharing small details of my life, work stress, family problems, even some past romantic disappointments. He listened attentively, offering insights that went far beyond what I would expect from a massage therapist. It was like he could see through my social masks. What impressed me most was how he remembered details from our previous conversations. "How was that difficult meeting you mentioned last week?" he asked while working on a particularly stubborn knot in my neck. This attention to detail made me realize I wasn't just another client on his schedule. There was a connection forming, a care that transcended the professional. I started noticing small changes in his behavior too. He spent more time in the room with me, chose music he had already discovered I liked, even adjusted the room temperature the way I preferred. They were subtle gestures, but spoke volumes about what was happening between us. It was in the fifth session that something definitely changed. I was particularly vulnerable that day, had fought with my sister, and ended a relationship that had been dying for months. When Marcus asked how I was, I simply broke down. Tears ran down my face as I told him about the feeling of always disappointing the people I loved. Instead of maintaining professional distance, he stopped the massage, sat on the edge of the table, and simply let me cry. Sometimes we need to fall apart to be able to rebuild ourselves stronger, he said. And there was an intimacy in that moment that I had never experienced with anyone. He didn't try to fix me or give empty advice, he just offered me his complete presence. After that day, our conversations became deeper. He started sharing aspects of his own life too. How he had discovered his vocation after a difficult phase. How his work was, actually, a form of personal healing too. Each person I touched teaches me something about vulnerability. He confessed during a session, and I knew he was referring specifically to me. There was an emotional reciprocity developing that went far beyond the therapist-client dynamic. I started realizing that he also looked forward to our meetings, that there was a mutual expectation that made the environment charged with sexual and emotional energy. The tension was becoming almost palpable. Guys, I know you're wondering if something happened between us, and I promise I'll tell you everything. But first, if you're enjoying this story, leave a comment saying what you think will happen next. The chemistry between Marcus and me was becoming impossible to ignore. During a particularly intense session, he was working on the lumbar region when I moaned involuntarily, not from pain, but from pure pleasure. He stopped for a moment, and I felt the tension in the air change completely. "Sorry," I murmured, but he responded with a hoarser voice. "You don't need to apologize for feeling pleasure." When our eyes met at that moment, I saw the same desire that had been consuming my thoughts for weeks. He was also fighting against the attraction growing between us, and this discovery changed everything. The turning point happened when he casually mentioned that he had a massage table at home for special clients who preferred a more private environment. "It would be more comfortable for you," he said, and although he tried to sound professional, there was an implicit suggestion that made my heart race. I accepted immediately, and when he gave me the address, I realized we were officially crossing a line there would be no return from. That would be our first session outside the spa's controlled environment, and we both knew this would change the nature of what was happening between us. The question was, were we prepared for the consequences of this new intimacy, or were we entering emotional territory that neither of us knew how to navigate? The first session at his house was everything I had imagined and more. The apartment was a perfect reflection of the personality I had mentally built. Welcoming, organized, with a masculine energy that made me feel completely feminine. When he received me at the door, wearing just a basic t-shirt and jeans, I realized we were officially in non-professional territory. The massage was different from all the others, more intense, more intimate, with moments of charged silence that spoke more than any words. When we finished, he offered me wine, and we talked for 2 hours about life, dreams, fears. It was too perfect, and I left there floating on clouds. But it was exactly this perfection that made my mind start working against me. In the following days, I started wondering if other clients also received the same VIP treatment. The doubt started small, just an occasional pang of insecurity, but it grew like a weed in my chest. I found myself stalking the spa's Instagram, looking for comments from other women, analyzing every heart emoji as if it were a personal threat. "Thank you for the incredible session, Marcus," wrote someone named Rebecca, and I felt a rage that scared me with its intensity. I started asking subtle questions during our conversations. "Do you usually receive many clients at home? What type of person generally seeks your services?" His answers were always honest, but I twisted every word to feed my growing paranoia. The worst part is that I still had access to Lauren's conversations on the phone. I had promised myself I would delete everything, but in moments of insecurity, I went back to reading those messages like an emotional masochist. I started comparing the treatment he gave her with what I received. I wonder if he talked to her the same way he talks to me, I asked myself, scrolling through months of intimate conversations. There was one particular message that haunted me. "You have a special gift for making me feel unique," Lauren had written. "All my clients are special," he replied, and this response left me completely obsessed. Was I really special to him, or was I just receiving the same standardized treatment he offered to everyone? That's when I started doing little tests. I invented situations to see if he would cancel sessions with other clients to see me. I asked about his schedule in an apparently casual way, but actually mapping when he was available and for whom. I started arriving early to sessions, hoping to catch some client leaving or arriving. It was behavior I knew was wrong, but I simply couldn't stop. The need to be sure I was different, that what we had was unique, was consuming me from the inside. Every smile he gave, every affectionate gesture, I analyzed, looking for signs that I was being special or just another one. The paranoia reached its peak when, during a session, I found a female earring under the massage table. My heart raced, and I started sweating cold. "Whose is this?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice came out higher than normal. "Oh, a client lost it last week," he replied calmly. "She's coming here tomorrow to get it." Tomorrow, that meant he had other women coming to his house regularly. I spent the rest of the session tense, barely able to relax, my mind creating scenarios of other women receiving the same intimate treatment I thought was exclusive. The seed of possessiveness had germinated, and I could feel it growing inside me like a poisonous plant. I started asking more direct questions about the other clients. "Do you feel attracted to any of them?" I asked during a particularly vulnerable session. He laughed, thinking it was normal insecurity, and replied, "My job is to take care of people, not get romantically involved." But I wanted more. I wanted him to say that I was different, that the rules didn't apply with me. When he didn't give the answer I expected, I started planting seeds about how it would be better if he focused on fewer clients, how he could offer more personalized service. "Have you ever thought about working with fewer people to give more individual attention?" I suggested, and I saw a confused expression cross his face. He was starting to realize that something had changed in me, and I knew I needed to be more careful. But jealousy had already become a force greater than my rationality. After weeks ruminating about his other clients, I decided it was time to act. I could no longer pretend everything was okay, knowing other women received the same attention I did. During a session, while he worked on my shoulders, I started the conversation seemingly casually. "Marcus, have you ever thought about doing something different with your life? I mean, besides massage?" I asked, trying to sound interested in his ambitions. He told me about some dreams he had, maybe opening his own wellness center, writing a book about holistic healing. It was the opening I needed. "You know, I have some savings," I said, pretending I had just had a brilliant idea. "I could help you finance these projects. It would be like an investment in your future." He stopped the massage for a moment, clearly surprised by the offer. In the following days, I started elaborating my proposal more concretely. One researched business opening costs, specialized consulting values, even writing course prices. I wanted to seem like a serious investor, not a desperate woman trying to buy a man's attention. Think about it, I argued during our next session. You could focus on projects that really fulfill you, without having to worry about the pressure of seeing so many clients to pay bills. He listened attentively, but I noticed hesitation in his eyes. It's a generous offer, Natalie, but I like the independence I have, he replied cautiously. That word, independence, sounded like a door slamming in my face. I didn't give up. I started being more specific about the benefits he would have accepting my proposal. Just imagine, you could select only a few special clients, focus on more complex cases, develop innovative techniques. I spoke, painting a picture where he would have less work but more quality of life. What I didn't mention explicitly, but was implicit in every word, was that I would be the most special client of all. I started doing calculations in front of him, showing how he could earn the same amount working fewer hours. You could have more time to dedicate to personal projects, I insisted, and you wouldn't need to exhaust yourself seeing everyone who shows up. He nodded, appreciating the logic, but I realized there was still resistance. Guys, I know you must be thinking I was getting kind of obsessed, and you're not wrong. Subtlety went out the window when I started being more direct about what really bothered me. Marcus, I need to tell you something, I said during a session. I'm jealous of your other clients. I can't stop thinking about you touching other women the same way you touch me. He completely stopped what he was doing, and I could see the shock on his face. Natalie, you know my work is professional, he tried to explain, but I was beyond rationality. I know, but what we have here is different, isn't it? You feel this too. He was silent for a few seconds that seemed eternal, and then confirmed, yes, I feel it. But that doesn't change the fact that I have professional responsibilities. That's when I played my last card. What if you didn't need these responsibilities anymore? I asked, putting all my vulnerability on the table. I can support you, Marcus. You don't need to worry about money, clients, any of this anymore. You could focus just on me, on us. The proposal came out more desperate than I wanted, but I couldn't hide anymore. He stepped away from the table, running his hands through his hair nervously. Natalie, this isn't about money, he said finally. It's about who I am, about my identity. I can't simply abandon my career for a relationship we haven't even made official yet. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Unofficial relationship. After all our intimacy, all our connection, I was still just a client with benefits. I felt rejection burn in my chest, but instead of retreating, I pushed even harder. Then, let's make it official, I said, trying to sound confident. Let's assume this for real. You stop seeing other clients, I help you financially until you get established in something new, and we build something real together. He looked at me with an expression that mixed affection and concern. Natalie, you're asking me to completely change my life based on feelings we're still exploring, he said with a gentleness that hurt more than any scream. I need time to think about this, time. After weeks of intimacy, connection, moments I was sure meant something special, he needed time to decide if I was worth it. I left that meeting with a mixture of hope and despair that left me completely emotionally exhausted. A week passed without Marcus giving any sign about his decision. I was destroyed, checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for a message that never came. When he finally called me, his voice sounded different, more formal, more distant. Natalie, we need to talk, he said, and my heart plummeted. We arranged to meet at a neutral cafe, away from the spa, away from his house, away from any place that had our intimate memories. When I got there, He was already sitting at a corner table, with a serious expression I had never seen before. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," I managed to say, trying to sound calm, but my voice was clearly shaky. "Natalie, I thought a lot about our conversation," he began, "and I prepared for the worst. I feel a real connection with you. That's true. But the way you're dealing with this worries me." My stomach contracted. "What do you mean?" I asked, pretending not to understand. "You're trying to convince me to abandon my career, my independence, my other professional relationships. This isn't love, it's possessiveness." His words cut me deeply because I knew they were true. "But it's because I really love you." I tried to argue, "I want you to be only mine because what we have is special." He shook his head slowly, and I saw disappointment in his eyes. "Natalie, do you really love me, or are you obsessed with the idea of having me?" he asked, and the question left me completely floored. "What's the difference?" I replied, and immediately realized I had given the wrong answer. "The difference is that love means wanting the best for the person, even if that doesn't include you. Obsession means wanting to control the person to satisfy your own needs." He spoke with a patience that made me feel even worse. "I'm not trying to control you," I lied. "I just want you to see the potential we have together." But even as I spoke, I knew my words sounded empty. The truth is, I wanted to control him, wanted him to be mine in a way that left no room for anything else. That's when he asked the question I feared most. "Natalie, how did you know about me? How did you decide I was the right person for you?" My heart stopped. It was the perfect cue to tell the truth about the phone, about the photos, about how I had investigated his life before even meeting him. But I couldn't. "I saw you at the spa and felt an immediate connection," I stammered, hating myself for lying to him again. "Are you sure?" he insisted, and there was something in his tone that made me realize he might suspect something. "Because the way you act, the questions you ask, it's like you already knew me before our first meeting." I felt cold sweat run down my back. He was getting too close to the truth. "Marcus, I just pay attention to details because you're important to me." I tried to deflect, but he wasn't buying it. "Natalie, from the first day, you knew things about me that I had never mentioned. You knew my musical tastes, knew about my routine, even about some techniques I use that aren't standard at the spa." He was putting the pieces together, and I was panicking. "I'm observant," I mumbled weakly, "and I ask other clients about ... What other clients?" he interrupted. "You always said it was your first time having massage." Shit, I had contradicted myself, and he noticed immediately. The tension at the table became palpable, and I could see he was starting to question everything about our relationship. "I need to know the truth, Natalie," he said with a firmness I had never heard before. "How did you really find me? Why are you so obsessed with keeping me away from other clients? And don't tell me it's just normal jealousy, because nothing about the behavior you've shown is normal." He was looking directly into my eyes, and I felt like he could see through all my lies. I had two options: tell the truth and risk losing him forever, or keep lying and watch our relationship implode anyway. "I don't know where to start," I said finally, and for the first time since I met him, I was being completely honest. "I did things I'm not proud of, Marcus. Things you might never be able to forgive." He leaned forward, and I saw a mixture of curiosity and fear in his eyes. "Then tell me," he whispered, "because I need to know who you really are." I sat there, in that cafe, with the weight of weeks of lies pressing on my chest like a stone. Marcus was waiting for an answer, his eyes fixed on mine, and I knew the moment of truth had come. I bought a used phone," I began, my voice barely audible, "and the previous owner forgot to delete some things." He frowned, clearly confused about where this story was going. What kind of things? He asked, and I felt my throat closing up. Photos, conversations, with you. His expression changed instantly, going from curiosity to something that seemed like a mixture of shock and betrayal. You stalked me through an ex-client's phone, he asked, and his voice came out louder than normal, making some people look in our direction. It wasn't stalking. I tried to defend myself. It was curiosity. I saw the photos and got intrigued. You seemed like a special person, and I wanted to meet you. But even as I spoke, I realized how pathetic my justification sounded. Natalie, you invaded a client's privacy and mine, he said, running his hands over his face in a gesture of disbelief. You knew intimate things about me before we even met. Our entire relationship was built on this lie. I could see the pain in his eyes, and it hurt more than any rejection. But the feelings that developed were real. I insisted. What happened between us was genuine, regardless of how it started. He looked at me with an expression I'll never forget, a mixture of sadness and disappointment that made me feel smaller than I ever had. What was the client's name? He asked suddenly, and I felt my blood freeze. Why? I asked, trying to buy time. Because I need to know how much you know about my private life, he replied with a coldness that scared me. And because if you had access to her conversations, it means you know about aspects of my life I never imagined anyone else knew. I was cornered. If I said it was Lauren, he could contact her, discover I still had access to the conversations, realize the real extent of my obsession. I don't remember the name. I lied once more. It was a long time ago. I already deleted everything. He narrowed his eyes, clearly not believing me. Natalie, you're lying again. I can see it in your eyes. There was a moment of tense silence where I almost told everything. Almost talked about Lauren, about how I still read their conversations, about how I had based my entire approach on information I should never have had. The words were on the tip of my tongue, burning to come out, but something held me back. Maybe it was cowardice. Maybe it was the realization that telling the complete truth would definitely end any chance we still had. Marcus, I know I made a mistake, I said finally, but I can't change what already happened. The question is, can you forgive how this started and focus on what we built together? He was silent for a few minutes that seemed like hours, looking at his own hands, clearly processing everything I had revealed. When he finally looked up, there was a resolution there that made my heart race with fear. Natalie, I need time to process this, he said, getting up from the table. You violated my privacy and built our entire relationship on a lie. I don't know if I can trust you again. He was preparing to leave, and I felt pure panic. Marcus, please don't abandon me now, I begged, getting up to, I know I made mistakes, but I really love you. Everything I did was for love. He stopped and looked at me with an expression that mixed pity and frustration. Natalie, this isn't love. Love doesn't invade privacy, doesn't lie, doesn't try to control. This is obsession, and I can't be part of this. He turned to leave, but then came back and said something that chilled me to the bone. And if you still have access to that client's conversations, I suggest you delete everything and seek professional help. I stood there, alone in the cafe, watching him walk away, and part of me wanted to run after him, tell the whole truth, beg for another chance. But the other part, the part that was still obsessed, that still wanted to control, was planning my next move. He hadn't officially broken up with me, just said he needed time. Maybe if I gave him space, if I changed my approach, if I showed I could be different. I took my phone and, almost by reflex, opened Lauren's conversations. There was a new message, recent, that made my heart stop. Hi Marcus, I'm back in Portland. Can we schedule a session? I miss your magic hands. Lauren was back. And suddenly, my obsession with Marcus turned into something much more dangerous. A war I didn't know if I was prepared to fight, but that I definitely wasn't willing to lose. So, what do you think? Was I right to fight for what I believed was love? Or did I cross all the lines of what's acceptable in a relationship? Because the truth is, even today, I don't know if what I felt for Marcus was genuine love or an obsession disguised as romance. Could it be that all of us have an obsessive side waiting to be awakened by the right person or the wrong one? And you? Have you ever caught yourselves doing questionable things in the name of love? Have you ever invaded privacy, lied, manipulated situations to get someone's attention? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been through this. I want to know in the comments, what's the craziest thing you've ever done for love? And more importantly, where do you think I went wrong? Because, looking back, I see at least 10 moments where I could have chosen a different path. Oh, and if you want to know what happened after Lauren came back to Portland, well, that's a story for the next video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because, trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Natalie and Marcus's story is far from over, and I have a feeling the worst is yet to come.